Okay, so welcome and thank you all for coming. Ask the Exchequer New Zealand version. As I said before, we did the Australian version. So this is mainly just to cover the particular duties and that of a Reeve in New Zealand. Please ask any questions that you have. There is not a stupid question. The only stupid question is the question you don't ask. Okay, so to start off with, the Reeve is the Chief Financial Officer for your group. There shouldn't be a financial transaction that happens that the Reeve does not know about. And if that does happen, then you've got to say something, and you probably should be telling Lady Rosa, who will then tell me pretty much straight away. And if you're not comfortable, then you don't have to say yes, and you can send it up the line and your upline can deal with it. But if that happens, please also let Lady Rosa know so that she can let me know, because generally, as with most things, the transactions are fairly ordinary and not a problem. Okay, so Reeve in New Zealand reports once every 3 months. They report on a spreadsheet. They put this spreadsheet on Dropbox, which I have access to, which Lady Rosa has access to, and along with that, they also put the bank records in form of PDF up there as well. It's very, very simple. There is a form to fill out for any events that you hold. It's very simple. And there is a form to fill out for pretty much anything that you need to do. And it's basically follow the bouncing ball on the form. And if you get stuck, you can ask Lady Rosa or myself to help you. Okay. So do you have any questions to begin with?
Richard just put one in the chat. Where are the forms?
Okay. So the forms you can PM me, or you can contact me, or you can contact Lady Rosa, and we will send you a copy of the forms. We have copies of the blank forms to use. Now I need to open up the chat so I can see it. Any other questions?
Hi, Lawrence here. Not so much a question, just a capping the thing about question about forms. I must admit I've been a bit more flexible about what constitutes a form. As long as it's got all the information on it and is readable and storable, I've said, yeah, good enough for me. And it's been past someone who says, yep, all good. I'll pay out on that or take it as a record. So yeah, it's rather than the form, which some forms are pretty ugly and don't play well in modern times. Just a comment.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you can do your own forms. If you've got any questions about that, by all means, ask Lady Rosa or myself, and we can go, yes, that's good. No, that's not quite. You need to do this as well. So yeah, that's that. Okay, so you report, like I said, every 3 months. You report January, April, July, and October. And Your yearly report is done in April. So it's not that hard. Okay.
I just have a question. In
Yep.
terms of the doomsday report, can you perhaps talk about what's involved in the doomsday report and what information?
You're cutting out at the end. Can you just say that again, please?
Sorry, can we talk about the doomsday report and what's required for the doomsday report?
Thorold?
Okay, so the Doomsday Report isn't really any different to the normal quarterly report. It's just making sure that as much as possible from the previous financial year, so 1 April through to 31st of March, is closed out as possible. That's when the taxation year ends for scans, and that's what the Doomsday Report is more focused on, is where's each branch at, so as scans can then do their reporting for the IRD. Whereas the other 3 quarterly reports there is a bit of leeway and an extension can be granted. Doomsday is deadlined. It's the 15th of April, come hell or high water.
Thanks, Thorold. Okay, so other requirements to be a Reeve: you have to be 18 years old, you have to be a member, and you have to be in good standing. Basically, that's, if you want to do the job, we're almost likely to go, yeah, that's great, because we need volunteers. But the job is not hard, and that's what I'm here to say, is the job is so much simpler than a lot of people think it is. And a lot of people are afraid to do the job of a Reeve because they're afraid to mess up the finances. But the thing is, you're going to have help. There is, if you get stuck, you have a whole team behind you to ensure that everything gets sorted out. So there is no reason to be nervous about being a Reeve in New Zealand. You agree, don't you, Thorold?
Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward forward role. The only branch that's slightly different would be Southern Guard, because they're the only ones that are actually GST registered, so having that added complexity.
Yeah.
Which, like you say, there's always backup. Lawrence has been around for a long time and understands it.
Yeah.
I've been around for a long time and I'm still, whilst I'm not living in the barony anymore, I'm still accessible. Svart has been around a long time equally. So there's always backup. Wouldn't you agree, Lawrence?
Yeah, I'd go with that. What was I going to say? The GST is a bit of a nonce, really. There's a section in the spreadsheet that looks after it, and I fill it in about twice a year when I have to, and send away a bit of paper and stuff happens.
Check.
So just on that, so who actually files it with the IRD?
I do.
Okay.
We are this branch. We are the only branch that has the GST registration, and there's the CFO effectively. It's for me to file. I think there's no point to hand it off to anyone else. It's literally quarter of an hour. Oh, sorry. Plus finding an envelope and a stamp. That's another half an hour.
It's probably the hardest part of the whole thing, eh, Lawrence?
It's the one.
Trying to find a stamp these days.
Yeah, who has stamps? So we're actually going to try and make your job even easier. In Australia, we currently use a program called Xero to help with our accounting, and it links with the bank account, and it takes a daily dump of all transactions. It moves it onto the Xero platform as transactions that you can go through and go, okay, it goes to this account and it goes to that account, and is really so much simpler on Xero than it is on the spreadsheet. And you'll find that there's even less reason to have an error. Like it's a lot harder to make an error when you're using Xero than it was on the spreadsheet. As I've actually used both the spreadsheet and Xero. So that's something that Lady Rosa wants to bring in. So do you want to just mention that?
So Lauren was kindly spearheading the rollout of New Zealand, I think, certainly starting in Southern Gut. And I believe, Lauren, you had a meeting before Christmas with the person that did the rollout to Australia. Did that happen? Have you got an update on that at all?
Okay, yeah, I had a session with Mr. Slana in mid-November. Oh God, it's about 2 months ago now, and a whole lot of information washed over me, and I've got some notes. And Mr. Slana has sent a bunch of training information for Australia as well. So I've got a little bit of an action plan, but some of it really it's more not political, but it's not accounting, it's not technical accounting, it's all about it's organizational, I guess. In terms of the chart of accounts, is what do we want our chart of accounts to do? When I say we,
so Lauren, just to sort of cut in there, this is Declan,
Yep.
Scans as treasurer.
Yep, good, you're the man.
Yeah, I have been sort of working somewhat silently on, I think probably the same document. I got that from Australia last year, and just updating that to be New Zealand relevant rather than Australia relevant.
Okay, you got me ahead of me there. That'd be good.
Yeah, so I've actually just moved to Christchurch as well. Moved back to Christchurch. So there's sort of the two ways we go about that. So I'm probably 95% of the way done on that sort of almost a handbook thing, and I'm happy to send that. The only piece that I'm not 100% on is the fixed assets yet, but that's not critical for sort of the day-to-day stuff for all the Reeves. So I will share that with all of the Reeves and get all of your sort of thoughts on it, and then you can tell me, Lawrence, if you're sort of in the same spot, if you were thinking something different, and we'll go from there. How does that sound?
It sounds great. In fact, unless there's any strong reason, I'll be agreeing with whatever you say.
Excellent. Yeah, so so I'm currently on my phone because the internet's not been plugged in my new house. So once that's up and running, I'll send that out to all of you and get some commentary, or if there's no commentary, we can. Xero itself has actually been running in the background, I think, for a couple of years now.
Yeah, I have access to the account, and there is a thing set up for every group. It's just not being monitored.
Yeah, so there's user accounts for all of the Reeves. So we'll get you access to all of those, either those ones, or we'll make new ones. But in terms of actually using it day to day, yeah, like Lauren, you said, the tricky thing is knowing what and sort of understanding the chart of accounts. But it's pretty straightforward once it's been all pointed out. So we'll walk everyone through that. But in terms of using it, it's basically ready to go.
I also have a new deputy coming in as of 2 days ago. The Honourable Lord Amir is my deputy for communication, and he is working in Australia to make help cards on how to use Xero in Australia. Once we know what is going to happen in New Zealand, we will get how-to cards set up for use in New Zealand. We'll put them on Dropbox, we'll give every Reeve access to them, and we'll go from there. Hopefully that makes it easier.
Yeah, cool. It sounds good.
Sorry, I do have a question on that front. Just in conjunction with the Xero, and obviously Australia would be a lot further along in this regard as well, is one thing I didn't have an understanding of from the forms that were being used was the difference between what is actually used for the stewards for their basic reporting and how that relates to the zero. So if that's covered in the stuff that Declan's been covering off with Florence, that's all good, but it's something that I was aware of as a potential gap.
I don't think it will be covered in what I've got.
I've got nothing about that either, so yeah.
Okay, oh, we'll have a look at it, I guess, and then review and respond accordingly.
Yeah, I'm happy to
Yeah, cool.
review any and all forms that get used in New Zealand once we move to zero, because the next thing I'd like to do once you get zero up and going is possibly move to something like a Google form that make it easier for people to put in, because you won't need to record so much data on a spreadsheet. And that's exactly what we do in Australia, but I don't want to push it too fast too soon.
So can you just explain that a little bit further, Gabrielle? The what sort of information is currently being dealt with by Australian Reeves on spreadsheets as opposed to what goes into zero?
Okay, so we have sign-in sheets and event reports for events only, which we then put on Dropbox. I'm not sure how the New Zealand privacy laws will interfere with that one. I'll have to get Thorold to talk about that in a minute. And everything else, including receipts and invoices, are then stored on zero. If there's anything that's too big for zero, then we put it on Dropbox. And in the report, we do, there's two Google forms. There's one for quarterly reports, there's one for Doomsday, and we fill it in, and it's basically follow the bouncing ball, answer the questions. And there will be, we're doing it in Australia at the moment, and there will be, when you get set up, how-to cards on how to fill in that form and what to do for events. So it should be fairly self-explanatory.
Hey, Gabrielle, it's B.
Yep.
I just wanted to just address the question about documents for event stewards and those reporting items. So just so you guys are aware, it's something that did come up last night at Scan's meeting, and it's something I am following up, is what the event reporting component will look like in terms of sign-in forms or contact forms. And so that will be communicated. Thorvalder and I were going to have some chats about it, and that will be communicated back to the seneschals of each of the groups, so that all that information will definitely be shared around.
Thanks, B. That's great.
All right, I'm out now. Have fun.
Yep. Okay. Thorold, it looks like you're co-host now.
Cool.
Hey, Thorold, can you talk about privacy laws in New Zealand and how they apply to Reeves?
Basically, the Privacy Act says if you haven't got a really good reason to keep the information, you're not allowed to. So that's pretty much where it lies. So sign-in sheets are fine; they need to be kept, and really they should be being kept in Dropbox. But as B just said, we're working through what that looks like. But that's the general gist of the privacy laws in New Zealand. You can't give out information without someone's knowledge, and you can't keep it unless you've got a really good reason for it.
What about meeting minutes?
Meeting minutes, it's company's office requirement to keep them. So you keep so all meeting minutes are kept. But whether they're kept by the Reeve or by the seneschal, I think it's more the seneschal.
Cool, thank you.
I think if anything's likely to be a question around the Privacy Act stuff, it's not so much the keeping of records that relate to financial information. It's the accessibility of those details to who is it actually available to, because one of the other principles is the privacy is that it's only available to people that need it. So
And
the Dropbox security side of things is really the thing that needs to be probably confirmed.
Yeah, okay, and we'll do that. We also will get, I think you guys are already, you sign a non-disclosure agreement when you sign up as an officer on registry. In Australia, we also sign one that's for zero. So the Reeves actually signed 2 non-disclosure agreements, which might be an idea to bring into New Zealand just so that that privacy part is covered for anybody who has access to zero to sign a non-disclosure, because they'll also be seeing the details of financial stuff from the other 4 groups. So that's why I'm thinking of going with that. If you've got any issues.
Yeah, Richard, is that something we want to discuss next month? Because it's a good point. It's probably something we should be doing.
That was going to be my next comment. Was that's more of a scans decision than a Exchequer decision there, Gabrielle. It's an SCA limited requirement to have that confidentiality and non-disclosures, because I had to sign it even though I had nothing to do with, well, I was not part of the Australian stuff.
Yep, fair call. I'll leave it to scans.
Yeah, so yeah, that's much more a scans thing, and it would have to be wording that worked with New Zealand requirements rather than just a copy and paste from Australia.
Oh no, it wasn't going to be a copy and paste. No way. No, New Zealand is unique, and we have to treat New Zealand differently to Australia in many different respects, and that's something I learned. So, do we have any other questions or queries or problems?
I guess one question from my end is what sort of time frame are we working to at this point for the zero rollout?
It's an excellent question, isn't it?
Yeah, so I guess that privacy or that sort of having an NDA, if that's something we should be setting up before the rollout, basically as soon as we can do that, we can give you guys access. But beyond that, we could do it now theoretically. But I'll just need to confirm that NDA thing.
I guess, sorry, just following from that, I guess the risk at this point, yes, it's obviously identified. I guess the risk at this point for those people who are involved in the processes, it's not actually going to change that much in the context of what they're performing at the moment. So whether or not that's actually a risk that actually impedes the rollout of zero, I would doubt. Just
yeah, I'd probably agree with that. I'll to say waiting a month for the next meeting. I will message the scans chat, and just sort of get their view on it as well. I know Richard's here, but we'll get the other 2 committee members' views as well.
So there's another thing I'd like to show you guys. So I'm a little all over the place today. I don't know why. I can work out how to share my screen. There's a website for all Reeves in Lochac with information for New Zealand. As soon as I Okay, so this is the Lochac Reeves website. It's got the current New Zealand deputies' email details if people don't know where they are. It has New Zealand Reeve duties page. The regular duties of the Reeve in New Zealand are as follows: maintain the finances and assets of their group. All financial transactions should go through them or their deputy if they have one. Every 3 months by the 15th of January, April, July, October, they need to submit a quarterly report on Dropbox. Every year by the 15th of April, they need to submit a doomsday report placed on Dropbox. As required by their group senatorial normal, every month prepare a report for the local group council. and as required by myself or my deputies, anything else. So it's pretty simple. So if you get stuck, there's a guide here on what your monthly and quarterly duties are. There's a policies page with access to the New Zealand policy, which is about 4 pages. So please read it. There is 3 forms. I'm not sure. So New Zealand sign-in form is here, and the New Zealand report form is available on request. So that's the Lochac Reeves website. I'm handing it over to Lord Amir in the next day or so. So it could be updated with more stuff for you soon. Also, as was announced at the Ask the Exchequer Australia version, Baron Bacchus, my deputy in Australia, is working on the handbook, and we hope to have a draft handbook out in the next couple of months. So that's kind of exciting news for us. It will mean that we actually have a book to refer to, ask questions. I would really, really appreciate when it goes out for draft for all of the New Zealand Reeves to have a look through it. Comments, questions, queries sent to myself or Bacchus or Lady Rosa if you're not confident doing that, and she can then pass them on to me. So any other questions?
Yeah, just an observation and question. So the technical side of being a Reeve, and this is from my own experience as well, I'm interested to hear what other people say on this matter. The technical side of being a Reeve, I always found relatively easy. You see you attend council meetings, you vote on the expenditure and so on, and ultimately, you do the transactions in the bank and so on. You see the transactions show up in the bank, you code them, either put them on your spreadsheet or code them in Xero, whatever. That's all relatively easy. There's a softer side to being Reeve, which is less formulaic, shall we say. I think that in my experience, gets overlooked a bit, and is easily ignored because it's not that straightforward. And that's doing the things that there's not necessarily a prompting process for, or it's not as clear cut. For example, okay, so let's say, and I was interested in the form side of things because where you get event stewards reports, for example. So what's the typical process? The event stewards gives you a report. What do you do with it at this point? Is it a case of just filing it, or should you actually do something more involved with it?
Well,
Really, the Reeve should be reviewing it as any CFO would in any corporate type business. So reviewing it, double checking that everything's been filled out, that there isn't some horrendous math error, that they've carried a 9 when there was no 9 there.
does happen.
Yeah.
So it's like that technical side of things, I think, is easy. Okay, checking the math and so on is easy. So what happens? So let's say, for example, but one of the common things is, for whatever reason, and it's usually pretty tricky to figure out, the income doesn't add up. The income reported on the event stewards report doesn't match what you saw in the bank account, and obviously, ultimately, that's important. I'm not entirely sure whether exactly how I know the Doomsday report is generated by the Reeve and so on, and it should reconcile presumably to the event statements from the event stewards. But you get an event report and it doesn't. What do you do?
So the first thing you'll do is you go back to the stewards of the event and you ask them to check their figures, make sure there's nothing being missed. There isn't a payment sitting in a lockbox that was meant to be taken to the bank but wasn't, or somebody hasn't paid that you thought had. Okay, assuming that comes out and you still have a problem, you send it straight up the line to your seneschal and to Lady Rosa, who will tell me immediately. Now, this is not to cause an alarm. It's just because I need to know about this stuff and Lady Rosa needs to know about this stuff. And we will then sort of make sure, do the double checking like we've just asked you to do. And hopefully there's nothing untoward, but unfortunately, sometimes there is. Does that answer your question?
Slightly. That's a bit more of a black and white answer than I was sort of expecting. I mean, a good example, you know, it's quite usual, not usual, but it's, you know, it's common for what the amount in the bank account to actually exceed what's, you know, they've reported on the income because, you know, a booking's been received or maybe somebody mispaid, you know, those sorts of things. And so, you know, that's not a question of untowardness going on or whatever. It's just sort of a process that has to be gone through in terms of reconciling the figures. Another one that's an example is sort of, okay, so I get my event levies and you know, to either Scans or Kingdom, you know, is also one of those things that should happen on a regular basis, but doesn't necessarily. So what sorts of things are in place to help Reeves with making sure that they are reminded to get their event levies? You know, what several level checking goes on at various levels to make sure that those sorts of things happen?
All right, well, I'll answer in Australia and then I'll go to Thorold for New Zealand. In Australia, we run a zero report every quarter. I do that in conjunction with the BOD treasurer in Australia, and we send out an email to all of the groups saying, this is your GST, this is your event membership, this is your levies. So GST will only be a thing for Southern Guard, and it probably won't be included for this. But it'll be definitely the event membership and levies. We could send out a message going, this is what you owe, this is the bank account that you need to send it to, please do that. And then it's, if you've got a problem with it, you come back and you go, oh, hang on a minute, this person cancelled, can we take them? And we fix it. Carol?
I tended not to take quite as much of a black and white perspective. I used to send a lot of like Facebook message type, hey, FYI, this is due. Got to say, Lawrence is absolutely brilliant at remembering, or as soon as an event was closed off and finalised, he was paying the levies and the non-membership type fees. But yeah, it was all, for this side, because we're all spreadsheet based at this stage, it was double checking the spreadsheet, double checking, you know, both the event and that finalised levies sheet, and making sure that everything balanced. Once you go over to zero, it's going to become a lot easier because it's instant. It's instantly coded. At the end of every event, you'll get a report that says that X amount is owed, or every quarter, or however it's decided to be set up.
Yeah, that's exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's more of a problem if groups aren't finalising reports for events, because that's where it's the finalisation that has always triggered that payment of the levy and payment of the non-members charges. And
How does that work?
That's where it's sort of fallen over with a couple of groups where they haven't had that sort of routine of, right, the event's finished, everything's been reported on, we close the event, right, now we pay the various charges.
Lawrence here, can I just throw in a couple of comments? Thank you for the compliment there. My secret weapon is called Trello, and at every event I have a form, and it's got about 15 things, a checklist of 15 things, and I just create one, and that's how I remember what I've done and what I haven't done. And yeah, no rocket science. And I'd started doing it about a year ago, and it's absolutely brilliant. You can look away and you don't have to remember. You can come back and say, what am I doing? Where am I? open this. Ah, okay, next thing I need to do is X. Sweet. I recommend this or something like it.
So
Yeah, I
do you
mean,
think it
some-
would help if we had a form made up for Reeves in New Zealand? This is how you do an event, and these are the things you have to consider.
God, yes.
Yeah, or just yeah, Trello is my thing. It's not the only thing out there for doing this sort of thing, and it's possibly not the best, but it's good enough.
Can you send me a
It's
copy
quick
of
and
that,
dirty.
please?
Mhm.
Can you
Sorry,
send me a
say?
copy of that, please?
I mean, so Southern Guard is a bit more unique because of just how many events they run. I mean, you look at Ildhalf and they run 1 or 2, maybe 3 events a year. Same with Darton, same with Cluane. Whereas Southern Guard seem to be a lot more regular at running events. So for Lawrence to keep his head above water, he's got to have something that triggers those tasks.
Yeah. I think anything I can do, or Lady Rosa or our team can do to make your job easier, please let us know, and we will do what we can to get that happening for you. It is my job to help you, and I really take that very seriously.
Just adding to that, one observation I've had over the years that I've been involved in the Reeving area is that consistent support from the Seneschal and the committee in helping make sure that the stewards are able to complete what they're supposed to be doing too. That becomes a vital, important thing to the Reeve to make their job a lot smoother too. So it works both ways. Obviously, the Reeve's got a responsibility to also feed that back where there's improvements that can be made as well. And sometimes it's about taking ownership. And I've seen it from both sides. And I've been treasurer before, so I've seen the whole line of where things can go wrong, what needs to be done right. And sometimes it's just a case of who's in the role at the time as to whether or not they're in the right position to do that.
Okay, sorry.
I was just going to say
Question from
thank you.
Lawrence. Hello?
No.
Yeah, just as quick, and it's really, as someone said, it's about offering and how far do you go? Chasing up late payments. I've volunteered to do it once or twice, and most times I'm ended up thinking, why am I doing this? This is not my event? Just my feeling, how out there should a Reeve be prepared to go to cover off something that perhaps a steward should be doing?
I like the idea of an event steward, especially for a big event, having a dedicated bookings officer that does that for you and then liaises very, very closely with the Reeve. Now, that bookings officer can be the Reeve. However, if it is the Reeve, then I want somebody else to check off any cash that you get handed just for conflict of interest. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. I like to keep some distance as the sort of the handler, but not the doer. So there's at least two hands on any piece of money.
Just in terms of the question about chasing up late payments, though, I mean, I think that's a good question. Ultimately, whose responsibility is it, for example, to chase up people that attended an event but have not paid?
Ultimately, that's the steward. And if the steward feels uncomfortable doing that, then they need to be raising their hand, and be it the Seneschal, or if the Reeve feels so inclined, but I don't think it should be the Reeve's job necessarily.
Mm-hmm. But steward has a mental breakdown, can't do it, won't do it, whatever. Then what?
It's
kind of an emergency situation, and the forces rally around and deal with it. I guess it depends. I don't think there's a general statement on that one.
Yeah, look, if the steward falls over and your Seneschal's not capable of doing it, then yeah, unfortunately, in that case, it would fall to the Reeve. But that's a very unlikely situation at the moment. And I've never actually seen that happen.
Does the event steward always have access to know who's paid?
Usually not. And one of the things I do is before in the run up to an event is hand out, do a scrape out of the spreadsheet for an event saying, this is what's been paid so far, and about weekly, and then usually on the eve of the event or close before, so the gate people know who's actually fronted up with cash.
Right.
That's the thing I do. It's not really in a book. It just seems like a sensible thing.
What I like to do in Australia, and I've run several events, is to have a bookings form, which is then shared with the event steward and anybody else that needs it, but only other people who need it, and have all that information there. But I'm not sure how that works with your privacy law.
They're legit users of the information, and I wouldn't expect there to be a problem.
Yeah, okay, so that's probably a good way to do it then. Have a shared spreadsheet among the people who need it, that you update when you check the bank, and you can let people know that way, and yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
All right,
Just
any
out of
other
interest, so how does that happen in Australia? So obviously the details have been pulled into Xero. Do event stewards have accessibility into Xero to see that sort of thing for their own events?
It has been known for essentials to get access to Xero on occasions so that they can check that stuff out. But generally, it's just the Reeve, and the Reeve updates the spreadsheet, and then people check it from the spreadsheet, which is why I like to be the bookings officer whenever possible, because then it cuts out the middleman.
Okay, so but in normal, just typical use in groups, what's people is that the typical experience, or I mean, is there a guideline on it?
There is no guideline on how to do that, but I think the way I do it is fairly typical among the groups that I've interacted with. Okay, anybody else got anything else?
Yeah, so I've got an unrelated thing to talk about if we're sort of done everything that you wanted to talk about, Gabriel.
Yeah, sure.
So I've been talking to Svata about this already, but one of the things that the scans committee would like to discuss with all the Reeves is your views on amalgamating all of the individual groups' bank accounts underneath the scans bank account, mostly to allow us to make changing of signatories much easier. I know recently we're having a real pain in changing over some of the scan signatories, and I know it's happened with groups before as well. And then so having it all on the one, and then having more of a focus of keeping at least the scans level ones, but ideally all of them more up to date. It'll make it a lot easier for that, and it also means that the bank will be a lot more familiar with the structure, because right now the way we structure compared to most businesses is quite strange. Whereas if we are one company effectively with a bunch of sub companies, then the bank will be a lot more familiar with that, and it'll make it easier for us to interact with the bank. So we're not saying this will happen for all the groups. We're just wanting right now to sort of get all of your opinions on that, if you will be against that or for that or whatever. And and I don't expect an answer now, but that's something we're discussing, and I know Sparta is keen to get that underway, at least for Ildhafen.
And just, okay, Lawrence here, I'm just trying to understand what you mean by that. I mean, we've got at least 2, if not 3 different banks involved, and everyone's got their own account. You're looking at least pulling it into one common bank and then one common account. That last step sounds a wee bit odd. There needs to be some level of...
So there would be multiple bank accounts, but they would be like sub accounts of one main account.
Yes,
I can't see a problem with it. Signatories are a pain in the bum. It usually takes about 3 months every time there's a transition. It's about 3 months before the new Reeve can actually do stuff and off their own bat. And you think, come on.
And that's our sort of main upside that we'd hope to get, is to make that a hell of a lot easier for everyone involved and a lot quicker as well.
Thanks, Declan. In Australia, we already do that mostly with Westpac. There's only 2 groups, and one's just going to abeyance, that use a different bank, and they both use Bank of Bendigo. But otherwise, we use Westpac, and the BOD treasurer has access to that and gives access to the group bank account and sets up new bank accounts as needed. They then let me know, or Lara, and we get the access. It has streamlined a lot better from when I was first to Reeve.
Yeah, cool. So we would ideally replicate that. If everyone is pro, then we would replicate that. Everyone, Scans is currently with Kiwibank, and I think all groups but one are with Kiwibank. SG's with Westpac. So it would be either SG changing from Westpac or remaining separate, or so someone will have to change bank accounts if we do it. Change banks. But again, it's entirely up to the Reeves at the end of the day, or the groups at the end of the day.
Well, is it? It could be a scans thou shalt. It's a financial thing. If push comes to shove, as Reeve, I've got no particular love of Westpac or dislike for that matter. They're as good or bad. The only thing, Southern Guard is perhaps the odd man out again and having its own IRD number because of the EG thing. Is that a problem at all, or that I don't care?
The GST is the one, but I'm sort of the same. I just need to double check, and it'll probably be a conversation with the bank around that, just to make sure that we don't sort of drag everyone into the GST situation as well. I don't know, but that's something I intend to find out.
If I can, add to that. Sorry, Declan. If I can add to that, my suspicion is it won't necessarily be an issue, but it is worth looking at for sure, because that's something that I was a little bit unsure when Will was going through that process initially.
Yeah, cool. So I need to chat with Kiwibank around the pending signatory changes anyway. So when I am doing that, I'll discuss that with them and see if they can offer some insight.
Just so you know, Chloe is also with Westpac, but I don't.
Okay, cool.
She was changing.
Yeah, cool. So there are 2 groups are Westpac, and then I think there's the other 2 and Scans or Kiwibank. But again, like we could change to a 3rd bank entirely if we're so inclined. So cool.
I don't know how the GST will work, because in Australia we all pay GST, so that could be. It possibly be that Southern Guard is the one separate account, but I'd also be happy with that.
So that'll be the big question mark, but I'll do some research on that and find out if that will cause any problems or not.
So just to clarify, in terms of doing the signatory changes, what is different to the palaver we have to go through at the moment? Just on that. What makes it easier?
So in my mind, it will be there will be the Scans bank account with the current signatories it has, being the treasurer and some of the at least 2 of the board members and one other person who I can't remember who it is right now, but they'll have at least 4 signatories there, and then those 4 will be able to manage the signatories of the sub accounts. So that'll be adding or removing as needed.
Okay, understand, thanks.
Is that all you
Cool.
wanted to talk about, Declan?
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
All right, well, if nobody's got any other questions, queries, problems, comments. All right, I'd like to finish up by saying thank you all for coming and thank you all for volunteering. The SCA is built on volunteers and it is people like you that help make the game work. Thank you so very much. Yeah. I hope this has been informative and helpful.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Gabrielle, for bringing this together as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Cheers.
All right, I'm going to stop recording now.